it should be outside on a patch of grass or near some sand, but if you feel interested in some of these, you can let us know so that we add them to the program more often. Yes, so we are going to the next session, which is a panel discussion for Brook East Africa. So the So the title of our discussion is Reframing the Human-Animal Bond, an African Perspective on Welfare and Ethics. So Brook East Africa is an animal welfare charity that focuses on the well-being of equines, so that's horses and donkeys. We would like to start by looking at the sentience of animals. I think the perception is that it is a Western concept. And so our discussion will be trying to see how this pans out in the African context. I start with a Bible verse from Proverbs 12:10 that says that the righteous care for the needs of their animals, but the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel. So looking at that, we have a panel of 3. The first person I would like to call on stage is Dr. Raphael Kinoti. He is a seasoned expert in livestock production and veterinary medicine with over 2 decades of experience spanning animal welfare, biodiversity conservation, environmental stewardship, and community development. He has worked extensively with the national and international NGOs, contributing to initiatives that integrate sustainable natural resource management with climate change resilience. Then there's Dr. James Kithuka. Dr. James Kithuka is also a seasoned veterinarian with over 2 decades of experience in animal health, welfare, livestock-based livelihood development across East Africa and Southern Africa. He currently serves as a program coordination and quality assurance advisor at Brook East Africa, where he leads capacity building, mentoring frameworks, and regional animal health initiatives. Our final panelist is Dr. Christopher Wanga, who has more than 30 years of experience on the African continent, especially in Kenya, overseeing implementation, development, and review of policies, strategies, plans, and legislative issues relevant to agricultural sector, health sector, and rural development, and that are important in driving economic growth, guaranteeing food safety and food security. So karibu sana daktari. Yeah, so we'll start the discussion with Dr. Kinoti. So Dr. Kinoti, how is animal sentience understood within the African context?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that's the most easy question, because then I'm speaking by and large to Africans. So probably, I don't know what you think, but we will have a discussion by everybody here, probably later towards the end of this. But I want to submit that Africans actually have always believed in animal sentience. There are many examples of this, and probably you can draw this from where you come from. You have seen communities and clans with something called totemism, where a community believes that actually a certain animal is a friend of that community, and they can communicate with them. I'll give an example of the Shona people in Zimbabwe who believe actually that lions are their totems. So when a lion comes to the community, then they are bringing a message. And the belief is that actually that message is coming from the ancestors. Probably, oh yes, these beliefs are everywhere. In my own community, I'll give an example. We believe that if a lady gets a kid and the kid passes on, that's a misfortune. And so the next kid who will be born will be named after an animal. And the whole belief is that actually when that kid is named after an animal, then that spirit of death will be kicked out of that family, and that kid is actually supposed to live and thrive. I have a very close cousin, a lady who is named after the squirrel. And she seems to do actually better than me. I don't know, I think that squirrel, that squirrel thing is working. So Africans actually have their lives so much intertwined with animals. The whole thing about animal sentience has always been there. I've gone to many communities around Africa, and they will tell you when a goat is slaughtered, the intestines will tell you many things, isn't it? But no matter, to many of us, that may begin to mean lots of other things, witchcraft, but it's never witchcraft. It's just the way Africans actually believed about the life of animals and how animals' lives are critical and actually are intertwined with their own animals. I don't want to mention a story that you all know. You know Opere, don't you know that? And how that python was believed actually to bring good fortunes to that community. And that led to actually a lot of preservation up until a bit late when that got eroded and things changed. So in a nutshell, actually just to say, Africans have always believed in sentience. They have done significant things around that. And some of these beliefs continue to linger. No wonder we are the continent actually that has preserved wildlife way more than any other continent around the world.
Asante sana Daktari. Brook East Africa is known for their work with donkeys, and James leads us on a lot of that research. So James, from what you've done previously, is there a way that poverty and gender dynamics are shape the way people neglect or care for their animals, especially donkeys?
Thank you very much, Dr. Samantha, and good afternoon, my colleagues. Yeah, you can almost tell I'm handling a difficult one, because it's something in between gender, poverty, and animal welfare. But allow me to bring a little bit of statistics here. In Kenya, in 2009, we earned 1.8 million donkeys. In 2019, we earned a figure of 1.1. That's about a 44% decline. For example, in camels, we had about 2.9 million. And then in 2019, we got about 4 point something. That's about 56% thereabout improvement. But then the question is, Who owns the donkey? Who uses the donkey? Who benefits from the donkey? Who is likely to see when the donkey gets sick? So the aspect of poverty is where people want to put their resources where they feel they make the best of the significance. But look at it from the African lens. We know for sure that in African context, the 1.1 million donkeys that I have talked about 75% of them are into proper use. That translates to about 600 or 700,000 donkeys. But then they are owned by men. But over 80% of them are on daily basis used by women. So the woman will be able to see when the donkey gets a problem, but they will have to tell the men that the animal is sick for them to seek for either veterinary care or provide any of the other 5 welfare and domains resources that they may require. But remember, poverty is an underlying or an overlaying aspect. In our context, we all know that if you don't spend 250 shillings in a day, you live below the poverty line. That's according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Assuming on average, the Kenyan household, we are like 4. So if a household cannot raise 1,000 shillings in a day, then they are still living below the poverty line. And this animal is used, and highly utilized by the poor people. So that complicates the science, because we push this animal further so that we can generate more resources that we can use to sustain our homes. When the money comes, it has to be prioritized. You cannot sleep hungry just because you want to call a vet to treat your donkey. Am I talking to the vets here? So you will have to prioritize, pay fees, pay rent, pay uniform and other things. And then when you look at the 5 welfare domains, the nutrition, the vet care, the housing, those ones are subsidiary. And that is why we usually say that poverty is actually where you put your resources. And the people that own donkeys are very poor. So what we see as neglect, in my view, is really not neglect. It is a failed system where poverty and gender interplay. But then when you look at it from the gender lens, it even gets very complicated, because ladies or women particularly, and children, for example, they will push this animal a little bit further to generate a little bit more resources that at the end of the day, only less than 60% of them can be able to decide where the resources will actually go. So that becomes a problem. And therefore, that is why we usually say, yes, people have the sentience that Dr. Kinoti has talked about. Those people that are responsible for caring for this particular animal can be able to see that the animal is in need of a particular issue, but then the person making the decision probably is like 14 days away from making that particular decision. And as the household head, being the man, you consider the donkey as a tool, and really not like an asset. Because a tool, because women will use it to fetch water and do other household chores. But then when it comes to considering it as a resource or as an asset where you can put more of your money, then it is not featuring there. And that is why you see, for example, with cows, the 17.5 or the current 18 million cows that we have, men really hold it so dear that when the cow gets sick, immediately they provide resources. They will be able to provide feeding, they will be able to do housing, they will be able to do many other things. But when it comes to the donkey, that is considered a female asset to support non-invisible incomes or livelihoods, then that complicates the problem. And I think that is why the welfare issue is indeed a problem, complicated further by poverty and also by the gender aspect.
So, asante, Daktari. Now we go to Dr. Wanga. Maybe you can shed some light on the existing animal welfare policies that we have in the country and whether they are relevant to our understanding of welfare in the African context.
Thank you very much, Samantha. Good evening, colleagues. Animal welfare is a very, very interesting subject on the African continent. Reason being, the perception has always been that this is Western. As a country, we have been within it, and a lot of times the practitioners in the animal welfare space, we may not have done a very, very good job. What we have on the ground, mambo kwa ground in animal welfare may not look very, very promising. From 1960, we've had a law on prevention of cruelty to animals act. The enforceability of this law was a bit of a challenge. And yet, if you read it, it's as relevant as it was then. If today we enforce that law, animals would be very, very safe. We set on a review path in terms of animal welfare, and the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act is set to become the Animal Welfare and Protection Act through a bill. Now, in terms of positioning, animal welfare, if you look at Schedule 4 of the Constitution, is county-based. And therefore, the one or two or three difficult questions were, why would, as national government, not clear with what you have as a national focus and then move on? So as we speak today, we have a pretty modern legislation, which is in draft with the Attorney General, Animal Welfare and Protection Bill, modernizing CAB 360. But as we speak as a country, CAB 360, if enforced, can give us the results to date. Because one of the areas we suffer in terms of veterinary legislation is not lack of the same. Actually, in the entire livestock sector, since the coming in of AFA, the only laws which are still intact are the veterinary laws, because the rest of the industry laws were repealed. So enforcement is a critical bit on the same. In terms of the policies and the strategies in place, we have had the National Livestock Policy. It has very, very clear provisions on animal welfare. We have the veterinary policy. It has very clear provisions on animal welfare. And going up at the global level, under the African Union, we have the animal welfare strategy. Specific to the donkey, our heads of state have proclaimed themselves in the resolution that discourages the slaughter of donkeys. At the international level, we have the animal welfare strategy that, again, through the World Organization for Animal Health, that clearly provides 4 strategies, standards, communication, education and capacity building, and of course, what we do as countries in terms of domestication. So in terms of the legislative and the policy provisions to guide us on what we need to do in animal welfare, we could say we are there, although we could do better than what is already in place.
Asante, Daktari. So we go back to Dr. Kinoti. We've looked at how in the past people were named after animals, but are you seeing anything that is different with our current times? We have a lot of urbanization. We have new people who are getting into owning animals, especially in urban areas, because maybe it's a status thing. So would you say there's anything about sentience in urbanization?
I think there are bits of that still in urbanization, I would say, because then I was telling someone, actually every Kenyan loves animals, one way or another. You will talk to almost every Kenyan and they'll tell you that actually my most favorite animal is one or the other one. You're seeing even our politicians on every weekend, everyone is up country. If a media station visits any of them, then they are in a farm somewhere or something, you know. So the love for animals is there. We won't refuse to, or rather we will underline that. But I think there is a way modernity is changing a few of these things. And I think the sector that is very much affected, and I have colleagues here who are really into that, in that sector and can speak a little bit better than me, is the pets sector, where you're finding lots of the pets being bred in cities and towns, and all that begins to go out of control. The care for them may not be there, much as probably the intention may be right, but I think eventually there may need to be some regulation of sorts on how actually this begins to happen. Because then we used to have our own traditional, for example, breeds of dogs, but now we're beginning to have stray dogs actually in what we may call the modern high-end breeds. So that probably is one of the impacts. But then also getting back to maybe what Dr. Kithuka was talking about. Traditionally, the donkey has been used in the rural areas by, say, Maasai or Samburu women, and it's been used nicely and well. But you look at the donkey used in Nairobi, for example, in a city setup, it's used the way matatus are used. The Maasai woman will use the donkey as an animal, but a young man in Ruai will use the donkey as a matatu. And it will look bad, you know, mistreated and not just treated well. It's like the thinking about the benefits that we get out of it begin to outweigh the whole discussion about the sentience of the animal. And so we are looking at it like a tool of trade rather than an animal that has feelings, that has emotions, that actually needs to be taken care of like that. I think that's a big shift that I can see.
Asante sana, Daktari. So again, James has been doing a lot of research for us, and recently he's been doing something on One Health, especially around donkeys, because we have limited information. So James, maybe you could give us some insights on your One Health study.
Thank you, Samantha. Yes, over the last 2 years, I have been undertaking, do I say it's a first or the groundbreaking study on donkeys. Majorly one, looking at the donkey value chain for the very first time in Kenya, just to make sure that I provide some little bit of evidence for Dr. Wanga to incorporate it into all his policy documents. And in this donkey value chain, just a snippet is that, yes, we've been not overutilizing, but we've really been utilizing just one aspect of the donkey. That is the draft power. But the donkey has a little bit more that we can be able to get from the same. For example, we were able to find out that, yes, 78% of the donkeys are used for draft power, but yes, we are also able to get meat for those who consume the animal. We are also able to get milk from those people that consume milk and manure. I know we were talking about carbon sequestration here and sink. I was wondering whether the donkeys can fit in because they emit very little of that. But then, yes, we also extract the skin for the China market. But then when I looked at all these outputs that we get from this animal, one of the outputs, for example, milk, looks very promising. One, because of the market. Number two, because of the value that we are likely to get from the same. Number three, it's also likely to help us preserve the species. But then when we extract this animal, the output of the meat and the skin is like over exploiting your natural resource. And indeed, our data was able to tell us that indeed, if we go that route, we are likely to have a bigger problem. Can you imagine, in 2009, as I said, we had 1.8 million donkeys. In 2019, we had just 1.1 million donkeys, a 44% reduction. The only single animal species that population went down in 10 years. How about if we could continue doing the extraction of the skin from this animal in the next 10 years and another 44? So in the next few years, probably we will be talking about an animal species that is extinct. But more importantly, I went ahead to ask myself, even as we human beings extract the labor and other resources from this animal, how do our human activities influence the welfare of this animal? And I was able to see that, yes, the environment in which we keep these animals, what we use these animals for, the much we push these animals to generate as much output from these animals has a direct influence in the way the welfare of these animals really look like. But because of time, just to snip it, I went ahead to look at the relationship between this donkey, these products that we are likely to get, and then I narrowed down to brucellosis. We all know brucellosis. I know I'm talking to vets. And when I looked at research, I realized that nobody in East Africa has actually undertaken any study even to give us the basics of like the seroprevalence of the donkey brucellosis. Remember, we get milk from these animals. That can give us brucellosis. Remember, we also kill them, slaughter them, and get meat. And people consume it. Remember, our population, they also support these animals when they are giving birth and other activities. And by the way, it is one of the animals that people interact with more than any other livestock. But to cap it all, when we did our first seroprevalence in the country, we got, from the Rose Bengal tests, we got 10.7% in the country. So yes, brucellosis is present in donkeys, and even as we get these outputs, we have to keep that in mind. But then when I did the riser, which is a little bit more sensitive, I got a 2%, which is also related to these other species. And then, luckily enough, we didn't get any Brucella bacteria in circulation. So our PCR was 0%. But the results are telling us that while we have about 22% in, for example, cattle, maybe 20% in goats, maybe 2% in pigs, 12% in camel, brucellosis prevalence, even donkeys, the 10.7% is very significant. And therefore, the office of Dr. Wanga and any other office really need to consider brucellosis even as they think about other zoonotic diseases in Kenya. And by the way, one of the major findings that we were able to get from the study, sorry, Samantha, I'm taking more time, is that quite a number of things are missing in relation to the donkey as far as policy is concerned. We perused quite a number of papers, quite a number of policy documents from the government and from other institutions, but indeed, you can actually be able to see clear gap in terms of evidence to provide policy. And therefore, we are saying, no wonder the donkey is missing on the table. And people are discussing about it, on how to extract the vigor, you know how donkeys can be able to endure many other things. Eh? And for that reason, people are over-exploiting it, for example. And so, yes, those were just a snippet of our findings from the study. But I never did the study alone. We were with Dr. Onono, Dr. Washira, and the entire Brook East Africa team.
Yeah, asante sana, Daktari. Just in case you have any questions, we will take them from the floor. But before that, we want to go back to Dr. Wanga. In your opinion, how may we strengthen the animal welfare standards without undermining the livelihoods of the people that we are engaging?
Thank you very much. Probably before responding to how to strengthen the implementation of animal welfare standards, I think the data you have on brucella is key. I saw Dr. Njogu here and Dr. Sabensia. It will be important if you have any disease data, either as purely an academic exercise or information to influence policy, please. It's important that we share with the DVS, even if his teams may not have been involved in the data collection, because that is extremely significant for us to be able to now plan around it in terms of brucella incidences in the donkey herds. How do we strengthen or support the implementation and rollout of animal welfare standards in Kenya? No straight answer, but from what we have experienced as a country, and I'm happy that I was invited to be part of this discussion. The challenge we have had is a standalone approaches in animal welfare. The moment we run standalone approaches in animal welfare, then we have a major challenge. Just like the previous speaker had spoken to the priorities. If you have 200 shillings, in my village, it's only the sadists who would buy poison to kill the neighbor's dog and sleep hungry. But if you have 200 bob and no more, the first instinct is to buy food. And therefore the donkey suffers. So, but if we are able to inbuild implementation of the gold standards within the mainstream farm operations, the mainstream slaughter operations, the mainstream transport operations for our livestock, I think we will crack it. Now, as a country, it is important to appreciate that the WOHA has done for us fairly very modern standards. FAO used to have standards, but borrowed heavily from WOHA. The continent has tried to domesticate. But those of you familiar with the new areas of expertise, everybody and nobody is in most of the time. So as a country, we also attempted to have a strategy on animal welfare where donkey had its page. But we realized that there was so much coming through that sometimes when you get replications, that you have an IGAD strategy, you have an African strategy, then you have the OHA strategy, you create confusion. But with the launch of the African strategy, and now comparing with the World Organization for Animal Health strategy, the country now is best placed to look through those two and now specifically put in the Kenyan context standards across all our livestock, pets, and I want to assure you that the donkey will certainly have very specific provisions in terms of what interventions we should do. But what I want to remind all of us, the practitioners and our colleagues in the space of animal welfare, let us integrate the interventions. We will succeed 100% if we make them stand alone as animal welfare, then even the uptake becomes very low, because the farmer may not appreciate it, as if you brought in a feeding program, and this feeding program had a lesson on how to take care of his animal. I think that integrated approach will really help us in uptake of the standards, which are not very difficult. Those of you who have interacted with the WOA standards on animal welfare, they're actually day-to-day things we can do as a country, as farms, or the individual institutions. Thank you.
Asanteni sana. Are there any questions from the floor?
Thank you very much for that good conversation. From what James and Christopher have said, it appears that if donkeys were judges, the man would be in trouble. That is to say, the attitude of this man, the man in quotes, of course, is very negative towards this animal called donkey. Now, how do we deal with this man? And I'm saying this because if you go out in the field, you'll find veterinarians there, private vets, animal health technicians are there. They are the ones who are encountering animal abuse on daily basis. Maybe Christopher, how do we facilitate these private vets and paravets to be able to deal with this animal abuse instantly out there? Is it instant fine? Is it something that can be done to facilitate this manpower, which is already there to deal with this donkey abuse? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kibet. Yeah, my question is directed to Dr. Wanga. I'd like first to commend Dr. Wanga on the things that he's been doing on the policy level, especially things around animal and vet policies. You've done really a commendable work. So my question is, you've mentioned about enforcement being a challenge. So is it possible for the vet directorate, just like the roads and safety things, like NTSA, to have their own enforcement agency, like an animal enforcement agency, so that they can enforce the animal welfare laws that are there? Also, you've mentioned something to do with the AU moratorium ban on donkey skin trade. I'm aware also Tanzania has also placed a moratorium. East African community is working on something, a motion. They have actually passed a motion on donkey preservation. So what do you think might be the challenge that we have in Kenya that we've not domesticated this? And what are the steps that are being taken by, I'd say, your office as the head of policies to actually domesticate the AU moratorium ban on donkey skin trade? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Kise. Just one short question to Director Dr. Wanga. The laws we have been trying to make, the new animal health bill, the public health bill, animal welfare bill, they have been outstanding for a very long time. We have seen laws coming and being enacted in a very short time. These ones, I remember we did public participation a long time ago. I think in the era of CASs, we had a lady called Kilimo, who was a CAS that time. That's a long time ago. What happened to them, and what is the challenge getting them processed? Because definitely we can't say the old laws are serving us as well as the new laws would serve us. So I'm curious to know why they are stuck. Thank you.
Thank you for the mic. My name is Pacho, and my question will go to Dr. Kithuka and to a large extent to all the panelists. I would have asked this question early in the day because there was a presentation that was coming up and I was taking close attention and it disappeared. And the title of the presentation was, "Can donkey farming provide a ever supply chain for donkey skin trade?" That presentation disappeared somewhere along the way. But it's now coming again when Dr. Kithuka says that continuous extraction of donkey skin is threatening the is exposing these donkeys to possible extinction. I work for an organization, and in the unit where I work in, some 2-3 years ago, we only had 2 donkeys. And today, I think they are about 5, if they are not 6. And then we had to castrate the male donkey to stop it from continuous breeding. Then I am wondering, why can't Brook now change tact? Instead of lobbying to stop donkey trade and meat consumption and skin extraction, why can't they now lobby for the expansion of the donkey value chain so that you can allow legal trade of the donkey products? Because the rudimentary statistic I've given you of the 2 or so years ago, that we are now ending up with about 5 donkeys, indicates to a possible that this animal can easily breed so fast. So if the problem is fear of extinction, why can't we legalize these processes so that we can have people breeding more and more donkeys, and then we can make farmers expand their livestock keeping by having just commercial donkey farms around? Thank you.
Thank you. I've got the mic here. I have 2 concerns. The first one is to Dr. Kinoti, and I simply want to know how you can balance animal sentience demands with use of animals for various purposes like work, sport, research, teaching, and training. Bearing in mind that animals, just like human beings, can experience mental discomfort, and animals have been known to experience depression, anxiety, and other mental health disorders. And then last question is to Dr. Kithuka. Just to quote you, you stated that the people owning donkeys are very poor. And according to me, this is a true statement. But where does this leave us on our way to Singapore? Because as we go to Singapore, we shall be reducing these poor people. So does it mean the donkeys will disappear along the line?
Okay, Dr. Diana Onyango. Well, it's not really a question, but maybe to just get a comment from the panelists on how do we reconcile customary practices that have still persisted that are harmful to animal welfare. I'm talking about things like bullfighting, sacrifices, as we have seen. How do we reconcile that with animal welfare and the existing laws? And also just on the laws, I'd just like to challenge us as veterinary practitioners that, and this is in relation to Dr. Kajume's question, that we have the current law that gives us the power to take action against incidents or situations where we see animal welfare is not upheld by livestock owners or keepers or pet owners. So have we really utilized our powers sufficiently using that law? I think this is a challenge to all of us to do that as we also push for revision of these laws? Thanks.
So we'll respond to those questions first, because our time is getting limited, and then we'll see.
Thank you very much. I will try as much as possible to be very brief. I only got 2 questions. The first one was from Pacho. Pacho, I know you are referring to the University of Nairobi teaching resource that through Farming Systems Kenya, Brooke donated 2 donkeys. Indeed, they are now 4, not 5, not 6. And it is 4 in how many years? In 5 years. So that tells you something, that when it comes to the breeding of these animals, and remember the University of Nairobi, they are just enjoying the best that they can ever get. Refer to my earlier discussion, poverty, gender, and animal welfare. That what we see as animal welfare indeed is a system where poverty and gender are also interplaying. But to cut it short, one of the reasons why we did this study was to provide some elementary data and to also ignite the discussion and excite the researchers who are seated in front of me here to take any of the many things that we got out. For example, we are convinced that if we, for example, take the line of the milk, then what Pacho is talking about will be a reality. We will be able to not only safeguard the species, but also generate a little bit more, even as we keep getting the 78% draft power that I talked about. But Pacho, allow me to give you a little bit of statistics. We have about 600,000 working donkeys. In Kitui or Makueni, where my friend comes from, a family needs between 6 and 8 20-liter containers in a day. I don't know how much they pay if you have to bring the water, but I am convinced it is not anything less than 20 shillings if you do not have a donkey. And on average, they travel about 4 kilometers. So a donkey will do 2 trips, which is about 2 hours. But if a human being goes for 8 containers, 2 hours each, and that's around 16 hours. In a nutshell, I'm telling you from our findings is that, one, if you utilize the donkey nicely for about 10 years, you will get between 650,000 to 1 million. And you will have saved people 22,000 of working hours. That's a whooping 7 hours. 7 years, not 7 hours. But yes, it's a good idea, and what we will consider it even as we move forward with our discussion. I also got a question from my mentor here, Dr. Ochondo. I don't know whether we are going to Singapore, but from our study, we realized that automatically those who transit from the very poor at the basics, they move forward, they abandon the donkey, and that would be a good thing. But let those who are very poor not be denied the donkey for export or slaughter, because you will be sinking them further into the pitch, even as we wait to go to Singapore.
Yeah, I have it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Probably just to add a word or two to what Dr. Kithuka said. I think the whole question about donkey slaughter is a question of breeding. You have an animal that has been neglected for years. No research on breeding. Nothing, no production measures on it. Nothing. But then you come and introduce a value chain that takes up, or rather is supposed to take up, approximately 7 million of those animals every year. You will not have numbers. Because then you can imagine with the cattle how much the world has invested in breeding of cattle for years. You can imagine about the pig industry, how much the world has invested in the breeding of the animal. Talk about chickens and talk about every animal. But how much has been invested in the production of the donkey? from even just the general animal production systems. There's no, I mean, it's just a couple of years ago that the government of Kenya just trying to produce a donkey production manual, you know? But then even that hasn't been disseminated anywhere. So this is an animal that has been neglected for so long, but now all of a sudden there's a value chain that is demanding so much out of it, and it can't sustain. It can never sustain that. So we will have to invest into that animal for a very, very long time for us really to get it to where we can actually sustain the demand. And I think it is out of that that actually Africa Union said, let us do a moratorium. Let us stop the trade, because the feeling is that today our people are needing it for draft power. And I will tell my senior Dr. Ochodo, I mean, if a time comes when Africa will not need the donkeys for draft power, I mean, that would be great. Europe was driven by the horse, isn't it? The First World War was fought by the horses. That's why actually we measure power by horse powers, because then the horse was supposed to be the engine for power everywhere. Today, Europe doesn't use horses for power. But have horses gone extinct in Europe? No, they haven't. Europe has gone into other ways of utilizing the animal. That would be great if it happens to the donkey actually in Africa going into the future. That's why we can never want Africa to extinct the donkey. But then now probably the last one for me before I give it to Dr. Wanga, in terms of sentient demands versus work, I think this is where we need a lot of balance, because then the very first thing is, are we convinced that animals are sentient beings? They can feel pain, they have emotions, they can sense. I think probably the answer would be a very clear yes, but then I'll ask a question. Dr. Kithuka will tell you, we do vet mentorship, and we look at the kit content of a vet. Do you know actually the one area that we are really suffering, almost every vet out there in the field, is that we don't have pain management drugs? How come the vets don't see the need to put pain management drugs in their vet kit? Is it that they don't really appreciate that animals can feel pain? You know? Is it that they don't see the relationship between pain and, you know, the impacts on the disease and the treatment of the animal, all that? So there are still significant questions about sentience that actually we need to integrate ourselves, and then now we can get it forward. Thanks so much. I see my time, I'm told, is gone. Dr. Wanga, please.
Thank you. I will start with the question on a policy to house donkeys as critical infrastructure. Very, very good proposal, because we may not call it critical infrastructure, but we could look at it in terms of its role and the risk to extinction. So this is a discussion that I will invite the proposer, although your name is not here, that let's speak to it. And I believe this can be innovative in working on a policy brief in terms of the uniqueness of the donkey and its role on our Kenyan economy. Professor Gadhumbi, you're asking home slaughter without standing as being very, very cruel. I can't agree with you more. What we could do as a profession, and this is again goes to my earlier advice, can we integrate public education so that if we can loudly discourage home slaughter, and for us, those of us who come from Western Kenya, we do a lot of feasting during funerals. My mother's burial last year, we slaughtered very many animals. I will not tell you how many, the number. So when I decided they all slaughtered from the slaughterhouse, I can tell you my uncles wanted to kill me, because what happens is that the animals are slaughtered badly. So what we simply need to do is serious public education so that the ceremonies, the burials, today slaughter slabs are all over the country. So the challenge we may have from the Directorate of Veterinary Services, we be able to advise governors to deploy sufficient meat inspectors, but we should educate people on the advantages of using those slaughter slabs and not slaughtering at home. Then the bit can be, you can still criminalize using CAP 360. But you know, when people are mourning and you criminalize, again, you may not succeed so much. So that would be my advice to, as our response question. I want to tie Dr. Kajume's question with Dr. Diana. The private vets, again, don't need to be facilitated to enforce CAP 360. CAP 360 is the most open law you can ever come across. The issue here, as an interested party, it's good to educate the policemen in your jurisdiction. So the moment you draw the attention of the police on the provisions of that law, they'll be able to arrest and charge people. So again, this is an area that the vets, both in public and private sector, supported by Kenya Veterinary Board inspectors, we can see how best to close ranks to ensure that this is done. You don't need any change, just ensure that the police are able to enforce that law. In terms of an inspectorate, the AG normally frowns. So if KVA is ready to throw its weight behind that initiative, we can attempt in the laws to create an inspectorate purely for animal welfare. But the AG would never hear of it. They will want you to use the Director of Public Prosecution.
So, Asante, Dr. I think because our time is...
There are two more.
Okay, if you can do it in 30 seconds.
So in terms of reconciling the harmful customary practices, again, this is doable because I remember when bullfighting was brought to Kasarani, we stopped it using CAP 360. So it's purely enforcement of the law. So that is something, again, members, you should look at.
So Asante, Dr. we are...
Then I thought the questions are to the benefit of the audience.
So, okay, we will indulge the audience if you can give Dr. 1 minute to respond.
Because like Kise's question is very key to be responded to. Why haven't we, this is now Dr. Kibet, why haven't we domesticated the ban, the moratorium on, banning donkey slaughterhouse in Kenya in line with the AU resolution? One of the critical things, any decision you make in government, you must back it up with data. We have been in discussion with the various actors. It's important that we can run some quick surveys. This can be enforced here, again, using our existing laws. So I want to undertake, we'll be able to look around and get sufficient data so that we're able to implement as a country. Our laws take very long. Our span of control in terms of legislation making, Dr. Kise, ends at validation. When you go to the Attorney General or Cabinet or Parliament, the force lies elsewhere. So this is one challenge that I believe the Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary is addressing in terms of not keeping these pieces of legislation gathering dust in very many areas. And again, here KVA could be good because through the advocacy voice, they can also help us in terms of speeding them up for processing. But anything that has gone out of the ministry into cabinet or parliament, we really have no control. It takes advocacy to speed it up. Thank you very much.
So, asanteni sana. So we can give the panel a hand clap because our time is spent. Okay. Okay. Wacha tuwape ya mvua. So we'll start with one finger, then we have the whole clap. So follow my lead. I will hand over to Professor Kimwele. We apologize for taking a bit of time on this. Yeah.
Thank you. An announcement as we prepare for the final talk this afternoon. Delegates, please remember to sign off with KVB before you retire. That is from KVB. As we prepare, that was a very interesting talk. We all know that animal welfare is human welfare. That is from the utilitarian approach, because we know we use them, they're productive, and they give back to us. So it is important that we appreciate animal welfare, and that was a discussion that went on here in this very interesting panel. However, we should also remember there is a dynamic interplay between that and human health. Because without human health and welfare, I doubt we would have animal welfare. You know, if you are sick, I doubt you will take care of your animals, whether they're livestock or pets. Equally, we know that disease, any research, disease research, for example, we know is ubiquitous across life sciences. So if you do any research in diseases or viruses of human beings, that may model the approach in animal disease research. The reason I'm saying this is because the final talk that we are going to have from one of our own, who's an eminent researcher. I hope this works. He's our eminent researcher, a vet, like we are, but does a lot of research in the human end of things, which we do also as vets. He is going to give us the next final but very important talk, which is strategies of HIV cure.